What's your sugar mama story? Story 1. In my early 20s, I met an older woman around her mid-40s in a bar. She was drinking alone, and I stood by her to order a drink, and she leaned over and gave me all kinds of compliments about my body. I said thanks and that she looked great too, and she gave me her business card, she was a realtor, and told me to text her around 2 a.m. I did. She rolled up to my place in a super nice Benz, woke up, and she was gone. Next weekend, she texted me an address and to be there at 8 p.m. and to clear my entire weekend for her. And I did. She had a really nice 8-bedroom house, and she was wild. Taught me a thing or two and let me explore all kinds of things I didn't even know I was interested in. The next weekend, same thing. I showed up and she had so much for me. Really nice high-end clothes and shoes. She also bought all kinds of kinky toys for me to use on her as well. She made me into a half-dom, and I would tie her up and do just about anything I wanted to, and we had a good time. Then, she fell off the face of the earth, and I don't regret it one bit, because she was really nice and spoiled the crap out of me. She made me food and would bring it to me while I was in bed, massaged my body darn near every day, and she would sleep in a different room, and in between the sexual times, we would have long, lengthy conversations about anything and everything. Story 2. I've been working at a restaurant for over a year and a half now, and the same elderly couple comes in at least 3 times per week. They're both probably in their 70s at least. The woman is always in nice fur coats and has different jewelry all the time, but is kind of losing herself to her age. I don't think she has dementia quite yet, but she's not quite all there anymore. The man is constantly leading her around, walking her to their regular booth, helping her order, etc. And I found out recently that the poor old guy lives in his car, and basically this woman pays for him to have a few meals with her each week in exchange for his companionship. It's kind of like a weird elderly escort deal they've got going on. It's sad, but in a weird way kind of sweet, as I've noticed he gets very protective over her and seems to genuinely care for her. He keeps all of her receipts for her, makes sure she gets exactly what she wants, and always makes sure that she gets her 1.5 scoops of vanilla ice cream for dessert. How the guy survives living mostly in his car in Minnesota winters is probably solely due to the help from this woman. Sounds like both of these souls probably needed each other. It seems like the guy has fallen on hard times a little bit and is probably just as lonely and in need of companionship the same way that she does. I think they have a pretty good mutually beneficial relationship, assuming that the guy doesn't take advantage of her and try to steal all her money or something. If they get any closer, maybe she should just let him move in and stay out of the cold. It would be a very nice Minnesota thing to do. Story 3. I was seeing her for about 2 months, and she was 10 years older. We worked together, and there's always been those certain looks throughout the year, and she was going through a divorce with a well-to-do architect, and we previously bonded over depressive situations that we were going through. It wasn't until I handed my resignation in and told the staff that it did kick off. She said we should go get a drink one night, and then nothing happened. Then she invited me around to her place. She had 3 awesome kids, anything I wanted booze-wise, food, great cooked meals, and drinks. Well, and she was in very good shape, and we absolutely bonded very well in the bedroom, too. It was almost perfect, except for me having to sneak out at the crack of dawn before the kids woke up. This continued for about 7 weeks. I had my car packed and ready to go, and we spent one last night together before I moved. We said our goodbyes, and I drove off. And that was the last thing I've heard from her as per the arrangement and her request. It could have worked out, I felt. Story 4. This happened to me a couple years ago. I was back home from college on a break and matched with this girl on Tinder. She seemed pretty cool, and we texted for about 3 days, then decided to meet up and get some sushi. She came over to my house first and parked in front of my house, which was my mom's house, for like 15 minutes and texted me that she was too shy to come in. Eventually, she walked up. We got sushi and then went back to my place. One thing led to another, and pretty soon we were doing the horizontal hokey pokey in my bedroom. She stayed the night and we hung out and got breakfast the next morning, and she said that she had to go to the mall to return some stuff and asked if I wanted to tag along. I said sure, why not? So we go to the mall and she's returning some clothes or something, so I'm just looking around the store. And I find this nice Patagonia jacket, and I was checking it out. When she was done, she saw me checking it out and asked if I wanted it. And I said, heck yeah, but it's like $250. And she said she'd buy it for me. And I just laughed. She took it off the rack and went to the counter. I thought she was just really committed to the bit until she pulled out a manila folder full of $100 bills. My jaw dropped, and I probably made a weird sound, and she just looked at me and winked. We left the mall, and I had my dope jacket all bagged up. And I asked her about the money, and she just said, "Don't worry about it." We had been talking for a couple days, and I knew a lot about her at this point, and knew that she worked at a close to minimum wage job. So I just let it go. She drives me back to my house, and before I get out of the car, she says, "Hold on," and pulls out the folder. I ask her what she's doing, and she just throws $600 into my bag. I felt weird and tried to give it back, and she said, "Don't worry about it, I have a bunch." She opened up her purse and pulled out like 6 or 7 of these manila folders. Eventually, she convinced me to keep the money, and I was like, screw it. I'm a hooker now, I guess. So I go back to my school and she goes back to hers. And over the next few months, she would randomly drop anywhere from $100 to $500 in my Venmo every week or so. We continued texting and she just kept buying me crap. If I mentioned being hungry, she'd order a pizza or something for me and my roommates. If I mentioned that I needed or wanted anything, I could expect to see it in an Amazon box on my porch a couple days later. I go back home again on my next break and decide that we should meet up again. And this time we skipped the sushi and went straight to doing the old bippity-boppity-boo. Again, things go great. She stays the night and we watch a movie the next morning. She eventually decides it's time to leave and puts 10 $100 bills on my coffee table. Now at this point I know she won't take no for an answer, so I just take the loot and say thanks. She drives off and waves bye to me. Everything seems normal. A few hours pass and I go to text her, but it doesn't go through. That's weird, but whatever. And more time passes, but my text still won't go through. I tried to message her on Snapchat, and it looks like she deleted me or blocked me or something. Turns out she blocked me on every form of social media. So I'm pretty confused, and I just play it cool and try not to be a weirdo and call her a bunch or anything like that. So break ends and I go back to school again, and I still haven't heard a word from this chick. Then at 2 a.m. one night, I get a call from a blocked number. Shocker, it's her. I asked her what the heck's going on, and she just shushed me. She was whispering, but not sexy whispering. She sounded super serious and a little scared even. She just told me that I can't tell anyone about our interaction together, not her name or anything. She even asked me to delete pictures she sent of herself. I asked what the hell is going on, and she just tells me she has to go. I hung up the phone and never heard from her again. Still got the Patagonia jacket, though. All right, people in the comments, what are your theories on what this chick did to acquire such copious amounts of cash? My top vote would be stripper. It would account for the constant flow of cash, but doesn't quite explain why she wanted to shower this guy with gifts. Maybe that was just her thing and has been burnt so much in other relationships that she uses money to keep guys around, like a fancy security blanket of sorts. Another theory would be, of course, that she is into some criminal enterprise of some sort, like a drug dealer, but I'd love to hear your theories in the comments. Story 5. This happened in Tokyo about 5 or 6 years ago. I met a client at work when I was 26 or 27, and she was 32 or 33. She was really cute, very smart and educated, and we got on very well together. She was a bit of a train geek, and she liked riding trains, which is fairly common in Japan, but rare for a woman, and she had a lot of cute quirks like that. She could tell you the make and model of every pantograph on every train in operation in Japan. Now, anyone who knows Japanese politics has heard her name before. I didn't know who she was when we first met, but my boss later told me to treat her like a VIP at all times. Anyway, our work project wrapped up and we decided to go out for a bite at a nearby restaurant. She tells me she needs help preparing for an interview at a very famous company for a very unique role that they would essentially be creating just for her. And I tell her I'd be happy to help her with it. I didn't have any ulterior motives. I genuinely liked her and wanted her to succeed. We met up again to do the interview prep and one more final practice after that. She invited me to play darts with her after we'd finished since she apparently enjoyed darts and I'd never played before. We went out to a darts bar in the early evening and somehow we ended up playing a game where the loser of the game had to drink tequila shots. She mopped the floor with me, but we both started doing shots until well past the last trains home. Eventually, we wound up going to an internet cafe to spend the rest of the night, but things progressed pretty quickly. She got touchy-feely and decided to get out of there and go to a hotel together. And so began our relationship. She turned out to be richer than God. She would buy all kinds of stuff for me and would never let me pay for dates even though I was making very good money for my age, and wanted to take me on all kinds of trips around Asia. She bought me some very nice watches and clothes, which I still have and cherish to this day. She had a Benz and an Aston Martin and some other cars just lying around in her parking spaces, in the middle of Tokyo. Probably would have married her if it weren't for some complications with her marital status. I found out about that after a few weeks of dating. It was a bit of a tragedy, really, and it turned out that she was in a terrible, loveless marriage and had a young child. I found out about that way after we'd already been going out for a while, and at first it made me uncomfortable to be in that situation, but I started to understand that she was trapped in it. And due to societal pressure, she had no real way of divorcing. Neither of them wanted to continue their marriage, and both of them were seeing other people, but due to the very high profile in the Japanese media, a divorce was out of the question. We ended up breaking up when we realized having a kid together would cause irreversible damage to her political career, and a divorce to marry a white guy would be the end of her professionally. That really sucked, but that was the truth, and she was the best girlfriend I've ever had. If I'd met her 3 years earlier, I'm sure my life would have been completely different now. And not for the money, I could care less about that, but I've never met someone I've connected with so well. Really was the one that got away. I mean, it sounds like this guy temporarily won the relationship jackpot, because some people might find an amazing person they connect with, but they're dirt poor, or the other way around where they find a filthy rich person to be with, but spending time with them is miserable and they hate each other. This story sounds like everything was clicking and working out. At least this guy can look back on these fun memories, the trips and the gifts, and it's pretty cool that he still has some of the gifts like the watch. But you know, it's never too late, and I would like to think that these two can find a way to reconnect again in the future. Story 6. So 6 or so years ago, I was just out of college in Southern California, living with my grandpa, and asked out a Chinese grad student after meeting her at work. On our second date, she picked me up in a shiny black Audi, said her parents leased it for her. So we went to a Chinese restaurant, and I had paid for food on our first date and just assumed that I would keep on doing so, despite making only $15 an hour at the time. So when she started ordering lobster, duck, and enough food to feed 8 people, I started getting a bit nervous. The check came and I reached for it, but she snatched it away, got out her wallet, and pulled out 3 Benjamins like it was nothing. And when she did that, I couldn't help catch a glimpse at the stack of crisp bills, all which seemed to have the similar pattern with Benjamin Franklin's bald head peeking out the top. She had to have at least like $2,000 in there. I don't like going to the bank, so I just get it all at once, she said. I had way less in my name that she had in her entire wallet. Anyway, she paid for the $200 plus meal and let me have the leftovers, so I had my meals set for next week. From then on, we alternated paying for dates. My meals would be 1 or 2 money signs on Yelp, and hers were 3 plus. She eventually would pay for Disneyland tickets, Laker games, and some fantastic meals before 5 months later she graduated, her student visa expired, and she went back to China. And she was really down to earth too, because once we went to a spot near downtown and she street parked in Skid Row. Now I advised against it, motioning to the homeless encampments, but she said it was no big deal. Very chill. Her English was good enough to hold a conversation, but once we were lying in bed and it was kind of a lull, and she said out of the blue, "I'm funnier in Chinese," which I thought was hilarious, but also sad. Maybe because of that, we didn't text each other much outside of planning our weekends, but I sometimes wondered whether she had like 2 or 3 boyfriends that she was just cycling through. She didn't have Facebook, only a Weibo, or some other Chinese social media. I texted her a few years ago, but the normally blue bubbles were now green. And still, we had a lot of fun, and she helped me get through some post-grad broke blues, but hope she's doing all right. Dang! This guy got Disneyland, Laker games, and delicious food out of this deal? Pretty impressive. It would be a little sad if this girl actually did have a couple of boyfriends, but would it have mattered? I think maybe that guy might have been upset initially, but might get over it and just enjoy the time together for what it is. In the comments, would you guys be cool with this money-spending hottie having you mixed in with other boyfriends? Story 7. We were lying in bed talking about our past, and he told me about a job that he had just after graduating from high school, working at a corner store the summer before he went to college. The owner had a car accident and became partially disabled. The owner asked if he would like to earn some extra money working around his house while he recovered. So he said things went well for about a month until one day, the store owner was gone and his wife came to the garage in an open bathrobe. At first, he just kind of blushed and turned away, but after a week or so of her turning up half naked in different spots around the house, he took her up on the offer. He said the owner suddenly doubled his salary at the store, but he only had to go there once a week, and the rest of the time he was to report to the house where his salary was doubled, and they bought him a new used car. He said except for his one day at the store, he never did any work except banging the wife, and suddenly, he has had enough to cover his tuition. He went to a local college and kept that job for 2 years. The owner, with rehab, was able to move from a wheelchair to crutches, and then from crutches to a cane, and then one day called the young man aside and told him they were selling the house and the store and moving to Florida. He told me that the old man also said, "I want you to know, you saved my marriage. You think I didn't know you were sleeping with her this whole time? Yeah, it was my idea. I love my wife and I'd do anything for her, but that accident changed things for us. You're young and just wanted some you-know-what, and a car, and a few extra dollars for school and some money in your pocket. An older man would have come in here and just had the house and the store and my wife too. We're moving on, but you don't have to worry about tuition. Just keep on with school, young man." He said his tuition stayed paid until he graduated, but he never saw the old man or his wife again. In a way, too, I wonder if this young man sleeping with the wife actually helped motivate the husband to heal up quickly and get back on his feet. Because I don't think anything would piss off a guy more than seeing a younger college kid doing your wife, and what better way to fuel your recovery and rehab? It seems like pretty much all 3 people in this story got some great benefits. The young guy gets free tuition and an extra bedroom benefits, the wife gets laid, and the husband gets to keep his wife happy. We should all be so lucky for this kind of arrangement.